proving a point. And again, to social engineering, how would you recommend people recognize a social engineering, a phishing call, a voice call that is done by a social engineer?
Well, I think that most people know is, hey, if you don't know the person, just be a little more skeptical. So I think a lot of times it's just that simple. If it gets too complicated, people just aren't going to do it. So I would just say if you don't know the person, just be extra cautious about it.
If they're asking for stuff from you that you would normally give them, just don't give it to them.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this thing about Vishing because you brought it up a couple of times. One of the things that I do during my show is I talk about the different techniques that people will use. And my absolute favorite one is talking about emotions, right? So I'm taking advantage of people's emotions. That's the whole point of this routine. And that's exactly what a social engineer will do. There are a ton of different ones. And if you ever go through training for interrogations and things like that, they'll teach you like 14 different emotions you can push people towards. And the one that I like to use, which is not one of the official ones, but I like it because it's very easy for people to understand, is embarrassment, right? So think about this. Let's say that you have 10 units of intellectual capacity. So everything you do takes up between 0 units and 10 units. So keep it simple. And of course, these units are completely made up. Let's say that whenever you have emotions, right? When you're really angry, how clearly do you think, Elliot? Not very well, right?
Not
No, just
don't think well and I'm angry.
you don't think well when you're angry. That's because your emotions subtract from your intellectual capacity. So if you have 10 units, but then you're angry, well, maybe you only have 2 units of intellectual capacity left, which means you can only do some things kind of well, right? So different people will react differently. If they have something that's like really will take up 10 units of capacity, maybe they just sort of shut down. Other people will force forwards, but they'll just do it all really wrong. Most people will still try to do it, but they'll just do it wrong. So what you want to do is you want to figure out whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do, how much intellectual capacity that's going to be. And then you want to increase their emotional level to a state to where they're just below what their intellectual capacity will be after they have that emotion. And that's when you got them. And that's exactly what these bad guys are going to try to do. They're going to ramp up your emotional state. So whether it's with pressure because you're going to lose your job, you're going to go to jail, whatever it is, and then get you to do what they want you to do. Some of them might raise it, but then they'll fail. And what I found is for fun routines and things like that, the best is embarrassment because nobody likes to be embarrassed. You don't feel good about it, but it's also not so detrimental that you're going to just shut off, right? So if you get someone to the point of too much, it's way above embarrassment, they might shut off. And if it's too far below it, then they're not going to really, they're going to be thinking clearly. One of the techniques that I do on phishing calls or whatever is I will try to embarrass them a little bit, make them feel like they should have known an answer to something that they don't know the answer to. Or something like that. It just causes a little bit of discomfort, even though there's no reason for them to feel that way. If you just make them feel that way, then they're more likely to do what you want them to do. So I'm not suggesting you do this to your boss, but the idea is understanding human psychology because that really helps you understand how others might take advantage of you. So even if you don't use it to apply it to others, if you start feeling that embarrassment or feeling the emotional state, maybe you just want to slow down a little bit, think it through, and that's another use of the pause is that might help you get rid of that emotional state and then be able to think more clearly.
That was really well put. I love the way that you put that. It's almost like having one of those like battery icons. And if you're like really hammer someone with rage or embarrassment, their battery, their little energy reserves for mental energy is going to just go down and down and down. And so they basically are just going to say, "Ah, you know, that situational, click whatever you need." That's really well put. And very interesting that embarrassment winds up being the most or one of the most useful emotional levers to pull there to get someone to do an action. Everyone has their kind of profile of information processing and storage and emotional range when they're confronted with these kind of situations.